Hey Nancy, aloha.
Oh, aloha. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Nice to hear your beautiful voice. Can you hear me okay? Do I need to turn it up, down, anything?
Well, you sound perfect, actually. It's really good.
Awesome. Is there any way I can get you just a little, or are you on like a mic? Can I get you just a tiny bit closer?
Oh, yeah. I'll move up here. Is that better?
Sounds a little better. Just speak in your normal, like your conversational voice. I'll try to set a level balancing the two of us, I guess.
O- Okay, great. Yeah, I'll just sort of talk about myself a little bit here and
Now you sound fine. There we go. All right.
okay.
And you don't need me to go up or down or anything.
No, you're perfect.
All right.
Right where you
Awesome.
are.
Well, first and foremost, a gigantic aloha and mahalo. It's great to speak with you again. We really appreciate it.
Oh, aloha and mahalo. Now, when was the last time we spoke?
It has been a decade. You were on the show. You used to talk to me. I was on this like a rock radio station here called K-Poi. I had you on a few
Yeah,
times,
I
and
do remember. I remember we had done the album called Jupiter's Darling.
that's exactly it. That's what.
And you've singled out one of the songs that I sang that you really liked, which was I Need the Rain.
Exactly.
And I was hoping it was you that I got to talk to again. So that's great.
Wow, that's awesome. That's exactly the case. That was such a powerful song and record, and what a great memory from you. And then that the in 2010 at this station, you and Ann did a thing, and you talked to us when the
Red Velvet,
yeah,
Red Velvet Car.
that was it.
Yeah, right. That's right. I
And
remember now.
and so yeah, it's just wonderful. Been a long time, but nice to have you back. And during this thing we're doing a series called Off the Road here, Nancy, talking with on all things considered, talking with artists. Obviously, everybody's off the road due to the pandemic, so
Yeah.
we've got just a few questions before we get into the She Rocks and also your wonderful new record. But first off, where are you now, and is this where you've been since the start of the pandemic?
Yes. We've moved up to Northern California, right before the shutdown. And me and my husband Jeff had gone on this coronavirus cruise, we called it, because there was one like Legends of Rock thing that we'd agreed to way before that I went and did with my players from Roadcase Royale, my other band.
Right.
And, it was just moments before the shutdown. We came off of the boat in Miami. We went to LA for a couple of meetings, and then we flew back into our new home in Northern California. And it was just like moments, like minutes before the shutdown was announced, and we're like, okay, we need to get tested immediately. They just came off a cruise, and then went into a big, huge city with a bunch of other people in meetings about other projects. And we thankfully we tested negative, because there's almost no way on earth, the next day that we wouldn't have been testing positive.
Right. And the cruise was in February, March, sort of.
Yeah, it was the end of February.
Okay.
We got back to LA on the 3rd of March. And then by the time my birthday rolled around on the 16th, that was the day everything shut down. So I think we're knocking on wood.
Unbelievable. Yeah, everybody's got different crazy stories, and you're not the first one with a cruise story, but they do sound the most frightening of all of the stories artists have.
They kind of do. Somebody was medevaced off of the boat
On the one you were on.
ship when we were on. And, we had 3 shows, and the whole thing was about 4 days, 5 days long. But somebody got medevaced off the ship, and we never got to go. We stopped at the port, which was at the Cayman Island, and it was like nobody gets to go off the boat. Nobody wants. They said it was because of the wind, but I think there was something else was happening.
Wow.
Anyway,
And that was the only weird thing, because that was another question. Was there anything else that was odd about the cruise besides a person being medevac? No one was wearing masks yet at that point either, huh?
no, but people were like like elbow bumping and fist bumping instead of handshaking already at that point. So, it was pretty. It was just interesting timing wise. Like it just became a huge deal right after that, and a lot of the other ships that were out, cruises that were out at the time, were quarantined out to sea for weeks and weeks.
Yeah, no, it was that was when it all really happened like that. And as for this project that is coming out, the new solo record, You and Me, and Nancy's already gotten her powerful cover of The Rising is out now, and folks can take a listen. In fact, I'll embed it in your post with this interview. But that album, was that something that you had already kind of had in the can? Explain when that was done and maybe some highlights of doing it, but also how it factors into the pandemic, maybe affecting the release and the timing of it.
Yeah, as soon as we were kind of locked into our new home, and I had a really nice, for the first time, really, I had a really great music space adjacent, to the actual house. So I had a place to go and escape to, and all my guitars, all my good guitars are there. I've got good amps there, really good microphones there, and so as long as I was like, sequestered at home with no idea that there would be a tour anytime soon for a long time, I was like, I'm going to take advantage of being sequestered here, like a lot of other musicians have been doing.
Sure.
You're stuck at home, but you still want to be singing and playing and creating and writing music. So that's really, people have asked me for a long time, when are you going to ever do a solo album, And I guess that would be that now is the right time,
right?
Because there's no other place to go or any other, shows to do. So I've had a really beautiful experience making this album because, mainly because I've always been so preoccupied with being in the band and going on the road and, so busy and preparing for the next day or the next city or trying to get there on a tour bus and just like inundated with the work that now it's like there's this, complement of time to actually enjoy being home. There's just a real blessing inside this larger curse, for me. And I'm sure for a lot of musicians that are becoming reacquainted with their own sort of inner self, their inner creative self. And I kind of feel like I'm a college girl or something all over again. Because, that's when I was writing reams of poetry and learning how to play guitar and trying to write music and, kind of learning how to sing and play at the same time and stuff like that. So yeah, it's a blessing. It's a blessing inside the curse. And I'm really happy with how it's turned. It's almost done now. So the next single, which is the title track, You and Me, should be out this month, a little bit later this month. And I'm just real happy and proud about the songs. A couple of the songs, 3 of the songs are covers, and all the rest 8, the rest of them, the 8 other songs are originals. And we've got some really cool guest stars on the album.
Well, first, before we hear about the guests, what are the other 2 covers besides Bruce Springsteen's The Rising? What are the other ones?
Well, there's The Rising, and then a version of The Boxer by, the Paul Simon and Garfunkel song that I did last time out with Heart. I was doing that in the Heart show, but I've got Sammy Hagar guesting on that one with me.
Wow.
And then, and then there's another one, Daughter, which is a Pearl Jam song.
Yeah.
That actually I recorded it with some friends in Austin, and it turned out really strong. And it was originally meant for a film that's still yet to come out now, since everything's stalled out. Everywhere around the world, everything's stalled. But it's called I Am All Girls, and it's a really cool movie based on a true story about human trafficking in South Africa. And it's, look for it because it's hopefully coming out soon. It'll probably be, not in a theater, obviously, but elsewhere.
Right, online streaming and stuff.
Yeah.
And who are the guests that you had? And also, was any of that did remote recording sort of begin to factor in due to the crisis?
Oh, yes. None of us have been in the same room together for the whole time, which takes way longer. Of course, it takes so much longer because, like, I did a little like demo version of The Rising, for instance, and I sent it to, Ben Smith, my drummer, who had the longest tenure as a drummer in Heart, and then he gets his part, and then I approve that, and then it goes back to, Ryan Waters, the lead player that I played with Heart and Roadcase Royale, my other band, and then he turns his part in, and then the keyboards come in, and then the bass comes in, and everybody like listens and says, "What about this? What about that?" And it's a real team effort. I call it like the Lab Seattle, and the Lab Denver, the Lab Austin, the Lab California, because that's where Sammy Hagar sang his part. We'll sing his more parts actually, and Taylor Hawkins gets on another song, and Duff McKagan, from the Lab California.
Wow.
So there's,
Foo Fighters and Guns N' Roses guys she's talking about.
Yeah, that's right. They had a jam because I sang on a Taylor Hawkins song for his album called Get the Money, which was a really cool album. And I did a guest vocal spot for him. And so I said, let's work some more, let's do something else. And he said, well, I've got this jam that I did with Duff McKagan, the Guns N' Roses guy. Obviously, Taylor Hawkins is a Foo Fighters guy. And I said, I really like this jam. So I took it, and with my guy in Colorado, I kind of reconfigured the arrangement of it so that I felt like it felt symmetrically like a song, and wrote the lyrics and sang it, and then sent it back to Taylor, and he organized a whole bunch of background vocals that he did himself.
Wow.
And sent me back another mix of it, which then we took those files from the Dropbox, to my guy in Colorado, Maddie, who then made a mix for me. And I said, okay, well, I'll listen to that. And then I just don't think I want those hand claps in there. Everything else is really close, but try this, try that. So it's just like art by committee, which has always been my joke. Like, we don't want to be doing art by committee. Well, in this case, that's kind of the only way you sort of can do it, especially if it's a rock album,
Well, it's such a great description, though, of you really painted. That was made for radio, the way you described it. You could just follow the path.
Right, I know. But it's really been wonderful because part of it, the reason why it's been so great for me is that all these people I've worked with in the past, I mean, Taylor is a newer friend, but all the band members, the players, and even Sammy Hagar that I've done a lot of kind of cool benefit shows with, I know these people, I know how to play with them. Mm. And for many of them, I've played for quite a few tours with. So there's like a
rapport.
There's like an unspoken, there's a rapport and an unspoken way we know how each other plays because we've been on stages, and we'll kind of like, I'll wait for that big drum fill going into that chorus there, I'll leave space for that, or I'll know how to exactly build into it with Ben Smith, the drummer, that we do really good builds together, usually with me on whichever guitar I'm using. So, all the experience of just knowing how these people are as players and playing with them so much, it feels like it's happening at the same time somehow. And that's the beauty of having such a good, thorough experiences with these other players.
Right. It lends itself, you're saying, during times like these, when you're doing this remote recording, suddenly that ability to intuitively know where they're going or knowing how you guys work together has lent itself to this music having a cohesiveness which defies the remote way it was done. And that's cool. And I can imagine the way you're describing things, it's really going to change the way recording. I mean, who knows how this story ends, but I can imagine that recording will forever be changed because of the necessities the pandemic created, I guess.
Yeah, I think I think, with the vaccine on the horizon and all those other things, like, for instance, we're talking to this guy from the Seattle Symphony, Andrew Jocelyn, who did strings for me, all of the strings. One guy did a whole orchestra's worth of strings for me on one song, and maybe more at this point. But anyway, we're in talks about putting on a live stream show at the Benaroya Hall in Seattle.
Wow.
The only people that would have to travel there would be me and my husband and a couple of people from here, from Northern California to Seattle. So we drive because we don't feel safe flying yet. And we just drive up to Seattle. And this performance hall, Benaroya, is one of the most beautiful wooden rooms you can ever see. And there's a huge pipe organ in the back of the stage. Wow. And we'd actually, Hart did a Christmas program there one time that was really nice. And, we would distance on stage and we would all get tested and we would live stream the show. I probably would do the beginning of the show would just be me, probably acoustic by myself, and then bring the guys on, and do a lot of the new stuff and some Hart stuff with me and them. But yeah, so, it's probably doable. And I think it really is going to happen. It's going to probably happen in April.
Wow.
And so by then, if we hold that space, open for our idea to happen, we could probably get there by then,
It sounds like it. It's a great plan. You just got to be careful, like you said, because
yeah, you have to be ultra, careful.
Ultra careful. I like that word. UC, new definition for that term.
UC, ultra careful.
I like that. And also on the note, as you were talking about the different musicians and stuff, it made me think, because you've been around and are touched by different kinds of music. We've lost so many cats who were, I guess, all the loss. We had Kenny Wayne Shepherd on, and he wisely said, everybody who has been lost is a big deal because it was somebody's loved one or somebody's mother or father or whatever. But there have been these musicians too, and I think of like Ellis Marsalis, father of the Marsalis Kids, or John Prine, or Manu Dibango, Adam Schlesinger from Fountains of Wayne, Toots Hibbert from the legendary Toots and the Maytals, and all these different folks. Have you been touched by any of the musicians that we've lost, or in general, when you think of like the human tragedy that you've seen unfold around you? Have there been moments, are there any specific things you can share with folks about the ways these pains have hit you?
Yeah, well, obviously, yes. I mean, I have an instrumental song on this album called For Edward, which is dedicated to Eddie, obviously, Eddie Van Halen.
Sure.
And, it's because it's a story about, in a way, it's because I was the first one to ever give him an acoustic guitar. When we were touring with those guys in the 80s, and he was like, I like how you play that acoustic. And I said, well, why don't you play more acoustic? And he goes, well, I don't have an acoustic. And I said, you don't have an acoustic? What? And so I went and got him one, out of my stash, and I gave it to him. And he's like later the next morning, early the next morning, in the hotels back when, people would ring your room, he rang my room on the analog telephone way before cell phones. And he played for me this beautiful piece of acoustic guitar, instrumental music on the phone. And I was so touched, and it was so beautiful. I'm sure at some point it'll turn up, somewhere in his recordings, because it needed to be immortalized somehow, because it was one of the prettiest things I'd ever heard. So I tried to return the favor, by making a beautiful little tribute to him on
An
acoustic.
acoustic. Wow.
Yeah,
When was the
yeah,
year? I mean, you guys were touring with them, or what was the story again?
yeah. We were opening for them for wow, mid '80s, I guess, or something around there. It's kind of a blur nowadays, from
What a double
you
bill.
know,
Heart opening for VH.
yeah, yeah. And we were on some big festival kind of places too together. So there were those days where you'd go down to the bar, and there'd be all kinds of rock stars in there, just closing the place down. But the Van Halen brothers were just, the top. They won the prize of just how to be, totally raucous and totally out of control and drunk, and they just be like yelling and you know just cavorting and all over the room and all over each other, and like fisticuffs would bust out, and then 2 seconds later they'd be like hugging, I love you, man, just they were out of control. And they introduced us. They were the first ones to ever introduce us to the kamikaze,
Drink.
the drink, yeah, the vodka with lime or whatever. But and roses lime, so a sweeter drink, which is even more lethal.
Wow. Listen to you.
Anyway,
You do have a great memory. I can tell now. You can remember all kinds of crazy stuff, details.
I can't remember the year, but I can remember the drink, I guess.
Well, that's a great part of the story too. And what's the name of your jam it's For Edward. That's the name, yeah.
Yeah, like the number 4 and Edward. For Edward.
Wow, that's so and you don't have your guitar sitting there near you, huh? It's not possible to get you to just sit there and play that thing for us.
No, I don't have it right on me.
No, it's cool. I understand. Well, we'll just have to wait with bated breath for that. That's really cool. And I didn't mention him not because of any disrespect. I was just running through the COVID related.
No, when we lost Tom Petty, and when we lost, Chris Cornell, so many big losses. I don't Eddie and Petty and Cornell were the hardest for me, because for me, Tom Petty was just sort of God, like as a singer songwriter, and his whole band and his ethic and his sound and what he invented will never. And same with Eddie, same with Chris. Just that never happens again. There's only one of those people ever on the earth, and so many of those guys who invented those sounds that became embedded in the DNA of pop culture, they won't happen again. So it's a terrible loss, all of it.
Was Tom somebody that you have any personal stories with or cool interactions that are a great way to remember him?
Well, yeah, he. Well, one time we went to this memorial for their when they lost their bass player. I'm spacing his name.
I remember when that happened, though.
Yeah, remember their original bass player. And we went to this guitar shop in L.A. called McCabe's Guitar Shop, where they were holding the service for him. And I'm trying to remember his name, but and Petty was there, and the rest of the band was there. And at that time, our our housekeeper actually had worked for Tom Petty for many years, and her name is Norma actually, and she made a killer tortilla soup for the family, and so when I was standing in the circle talking to those guys, saying, "Oh my God, so sorry for your loss," and we'd met before, but he goes, "Yeah, well, hey, Norma works for your family now, right?" I go, "Oh yeah, she's the greatest." And he goes, "How about that tortilla soup?" "Yeah, what about the chili Tom Petty that she makes too?" And he laughed, because she named the chili after him, and because he loved her cooking so much.
What a great story. Howie Epstein, is that the guy you're talking about?
Yes, Howie, thank you so much. I was kicking myself for not remembering that.
No worries. You have a good
Yeah.
memory. Like you said, there are different pockets that are a little darker, but then other pockets that are very bright in your memory.
Well, it's the personal stuff. For
That's right.
me, that's what really sticks to my bones. And like however many hotel rooms, I couldn't tell you what city that hotel room was in, or what day that was.
But you remember
I
the
mean, my
story from
sister,
in it.
but I remember the contact of
Yeah.
the people,
Oh, I love
and
it.
what night, good nights where the show really sparkled, stuff like that.
No, you've got a great memory, and I appreciate it. Super, super. All the stories you've said today are touching, and this event that we've got you on for, the She Rocks Awards thing, is another one of these
Yeah.
cases where there's a lot of. I'm looking at some. I'm not going to run through all of the folks being honored at this 9th annual event, but some are Amy Lee of Evanescence, Cherie Curry from the Runaways, Cindy Blackman Santana. She was our guest actually earlier in the series along with Carlos. The Go-Go's, Margaret Cho, many others. It's hosted by Lizzie Hale from Hailstorm, and obviously you're being inducted along with them. Of all the cats I have mentioned, and those I haven't named too, who among them are you most familiar with, maybe friends with, or have any kind of interesting stories?
Well, I've partied with the Go-Go's a few times in the bad old days, and I don't, being like such a touring musician, I haven't really crossed that paths with as many. I've been at many events with a lot of those people, but I haven't like spent time and hung out really. So, but yeah, the Go-Go's, I
Would be
lived
the
through
one.
that part, that's for sure.
Well, the bad old days. I love how you described it. That's funny. Well, there you go. So nothing with the Runaways, I guess, because that would, when I think of you guys, as I think about your career, kind of backing up and taking a look at the pioneering way that you have been an inspiration for other women over the decades of your career. You guys have played such a pivotal role in opening doors. And I guess when I think of the Runaways, I think of a similar thing. But dialing in on yourself, tell a story as you see it now, because you're in a great vantage point to look back on something like this as something. Like I said, you're a real pioneer, and I can't think of. I mean, there's probably so many other female rockers who look at you as a huge inspiration. But talk about developing that interest in music, and maybe some of those first important experiences that you look at now that both brought you to sing and to play the guitar.
Oh well, there was like a moment in 1963, I believe, when the Beatles played on the Ed Sullivan Show on black and white TV, and I was about 8, and it was the lunar landing of pop culture. It was a flash mob. It was like the culture shifted on a dime because this new thing, which we sort of heard about before it happened too. So there was all this anticipation and lots of press about it before they actually turned up on our television sets in our living room. And it was so cool. It was so, they were so lively, and, their cool hair was so different, and they were so hip, and they were like the new definition of hip before there was really hip. And they were sexy and cute, and they had their kind of uniforms, and they were unified, and they were fashionable, and they sounded so good. They were really a good band, obviously, and their harmonies were great, and they were just wild. It was just a wild, right out of left field, unexpected gift to the world. And so we immediately had to fixate on getting guitars, learning how to play guitar. We'd already played like a lot of ukuleles and some piano in our family, and singing a lot in the family. But this was like a band. We had to have a band, and we had to be like the Beatles. We didn't want to like marry the Beatles. I've said this so many times, but we really wanted to be the Beatles. So by the time they came to Seattle, where we lived, to the Seattle Center to play the show in '66, We had a band. We had uniforms, except with skirts that matched the Beatles' uniforms.
Wow.
We had two of them. Our mom was a really good seamstress, so we had the Mandarin collar beige jackets with the military buttons, and we also had the double-breasted, you know, wide collar navy blue jackets with skirts, and Beatle boots, always Beatle boots. So, we were just the Beatles as much as we could be the Beatles. And then we were super fans for the entirety of the Beatles, including Paul McCartney's solo stuff and John's solo stuff and George's solo stuff and Ringo, too. So, it lasted for not as many years as you would think, judging from how the culture shifted thanks to them. But it happened so fast, and it was so in depth, how deep it went into the culture.
And they shifted too, though, as you're describing that. I mean, they went from those kind of looks to the long hair and the facial hair. And I mean, it was a real evolution for them.
Yeah, they got real psychedelic there for a while.
Yeah, totally. Did you ever get a chance to tell them about, any of the members of the band, like their impact on you?
I was in a few rooms with Paul McCartney along the way, at his show of his with Wings, and at a different time when it was just at the Paul McCartney show. And, I got to meet him a couple of times and just go, I was such a fan. I was so unable to say a word, basically. I was tongue-tied, because it was like, these are right here in this room are the molecules that comprise Paul McCartney. That's Paul effing McCartney. So I was just like, yeah, nervous, just trying not to look like deer in the headlights. And he is just as gracious as you would imagine him to be, and really, just ever the Paul, just really a sweet, accommodating, nice person, and inclusive, not snooty in any way whatsoever, just really great.
That's outrageous, the amount of people that have probably had those incidents. I mean, I've asked so many musicians like you, and they all have a similar story. Rarely can they think of what they want to say when they get their cat. And thinking about these awards, it's the opposite in so many ways, right? These She Rocks awards, where when you think about all the different people who look at you in the, as I described you, I mean, you carved a new path, which you two did, you and Ann. I mean, people it hadn't really been done, anything like that. And so you're going to be, when you're at this kind of thing, and I know it's a virtual thing, but there are chances, I guess, for people to speak with you virtually. There's going to be like some performances, awards, speeches, but you're going to kind of explain what you're going to do with that. But also, is this the kind of thing, the kind of way you talked about Paul, that experience must happen to you, though, because people go, oh my gosh, I am finally with Nancy Wilson.
Well, it's funny. I mean, it's really funny because I forget that people can perceive me that way. Most of the time, I'm not aware of that. It doesn't occur to me. But like in situations where you're in a meet and greet, for instance, and there's a line of people, 30 or 90 people that they're going to stop and get a picture and say a couple words and meet you and then go. The next person comes up. So many of them are just like shaking and crying, or like, this is the best day of my life, or you saved my life, or you got me through the worst thing that ever happened to me in my life, and your songs mean everything, and thank you for your music. And so many people are just like beyond nervous to be in your presence. And it's just so sweet. Like when you think of what the music means to those people and how important it is and how it does save people from, the dark side and the losses and the, getting through the tough stuff, and how the songs are really bigger than all of us put together, for purposes of healing and, just helping people get through their lives. And, being creative is the same thing. Sometimes you feel like, where did that come from? It's greater than me. It's bigger than I am, but it serves all those great purposes in the world. It makes the world better.
Those experiences, the way you describe it, I was just kind of visualizing the line of folks, and I guess at this event they have like one of those after show VIP Zoom. Have you done one of those yet? So people are going to do a virtual version, sort of what you just described, I guess, is going to happen at this thing. How do they do something like? Have you done one of those before? Like, how does that take place?
What I have done recently is a thing called Musician, like musician, but with a U in it, where it's like a masterclass sort of an arrangement where you have a class of people in a Zoom, and then there's an instructor in the Zoom, and you're Zooming from your location to demonstrate some of your technique for them and play a little song, play us a little tune, and then they ask questions and I answer questions, and then they play some of the songs, mainly heart songs that they've learned how to play and sing. And so I get to sort of grade them and encourage them there. So that was one thing that was really fun to do. The thing before that I did was the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction for the Doobie Brothers in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame show. And it was a really cool show. I thought in the end, watching it later, it had a lot more character, and it was not so tedious, like as a lot of really regular award shows on TV would be, because it's just more personable. There's more things that are just kind of off the cuff that are off the script, and just more fun, to be had. So I imagine it'll be a bit like that, and I'm going to do, I guess, a red carpet where I'm Zooming in advance so that they can cut that in to the actual show. So I'm going to do a bunch of content for them this week.
Filmed at your house sort of deal?
Yeah. I have some lights. They're going to actually send one guy, totally protocol, who drives up from Marin, who did the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame with me. Just one person only. He wipes, he disinfects the entire room and all the equipment that he brings in and sets up.
And then you seal him in like a little astronaut suit sort of deal.
Yeah, yes. Hazmat, and he brings the lighting and the sound gear. And I'm, going to actually do a track by track, do some stuff for the album rollout as well with the same guy. So we're going to, do a bunch of different content for the She Rocks as well as for my album release. But
it doesn't have that same emotional thing as you described of the fans. Getting back to them waiting in a line after all these decades of doing that. I've never really asked anyone this question ever. So are there ever any moments that stick out of a person, and I can, as you described it, they're shaking, and because we just had Peter Frampton on, and Peter Frampton told us all about I guess the first time that he was with George Harrison, and he said the same thing. He said, I was shaking. I could barely even communicate to him. And so thinking about those meet and greets for you, when you've had the fans, is there just one thing that you can remember when a person maybe told you a story of being saved by one of your tunes, or just one of those memories that gives you kind of chills to remember?
Well, it's really interesting how many there are to recount. I mean, there's so many. It's impossible to pick one out of them all. I mean, you also have, people in wheelchairs and coming through who it's their last wish, is to come and have a picture with you, or just see you in person, or meet you, or, get a picture with you. I think there was one kind of younger girl, who was really at death's door, and I think that was the hardest one. And I said, okay, people, on the team here, next time that happens, please make it be the last person, because I couldn't hold it together, after seeing that. And, I didn't want to be crying when the next person comes up crying to me either. So,
Wow.
it's really endearing though, like what it all means to people. And it's just a beautiful comment on music for sure.
Oh, it's a great way of describing it, and I can only imagine how touching something like that is. The thing about it is it's weird about this being touched by music, because anyone who has any kind of slightly deeper understanding of you than the casual person might realize that in addition to what you described about the Beatles, there was another group that you've been associated with for so long that goes back so long, your association with Led Zeppelin, and in some ways, folks could say, who know a little bit more than that even, could say, well, wow, it really did eventually come full circle with the Kennedy Center honors. But can you scroll back to the first part of that, maybe like when you discovered them and then maybe first got to meet them?
Well, yeah. When they first toured through Seattle, they were opening for, I think it was the Fifth Dimension.
Wow.
And they were opening and they were doing Whole Lotta Love, and Jimmy had the violin bow and the theremin and everything, and it was at this little place called the Seattle Aqua Theater. It was like a small little outdoor Green Lake Aqua Theater. And we were really pretty young, Anne was early teens. I guess I was not even a teenager yet. And they were playing, we were there to see the Fifth Dimension, and out comes this band that with this like basically shirtless Robert Plant, with his shirt open, and the jeans and the sexy, everything was so sexy with them. And it was like we were scandalized. We were like, oh my God, did you see that gesture? Did you look? Did you see? Did you catch that innuendo? And we're just scandalized, and we almost wanted to like leave because we were too like caught in the moment to not to really have a judgment that like an uptight young girly judgmental reaction kind of melted right away after the third song, And, so that's the first time we ever got to see them live. And then when the album started, growing, like it was in everybody in high school's turntables. It was everywhere. It was on the radio. It was in your car, and it was so good. It was like nothing else. And once again, it's like the way the English players would reinterpret the blues back through the English accent, and that lens. It's of course better than, just as good, if not better than the original pure blues that it borrowed from. So they reinvented the blues.
Oh, they totally did. I mean, and they took
like a lot of great English bands did,
And sometimes, right? A lot of those bands did it in different ways, and in some cases they did it with songs that had been from many, many decades prior to them even being born, and turning them around. When did you first run into them, though? I've seen pictures as a little kid, because I was a Heart fan when, in that era, when I was a little boy, but that was one of my first bands. As a little boy, that was the sound of your sister's voice, I guess it was, on the radio as a little child was very enticing. But I remember seeing pictures, because I'd get Hit Parader and Circus and all those magazines, and there were pictures of you with them. When did you first meet them?
We met them. Well, we met Robert Plant in, what was it, Nebworth, at a festival in England, and we heard that he might be there. Like the word was passed around that Robert Plant might be here. I think I saw Robert Plant. And we went up. Nobody told Anne. It's like, whatever you do, don't tell Anne if he's here because she's up there. She has to do the lead singing, in a rock band. If he's watching, she might just choke, because we were so such big fans, and we did a lot of their songs too,
right,
along the way. Our nickname in Vancouver, BC was Little Led Zeppelin because we played so much Zeppelin in our club sets.
Including Stairway.
And Whole Lot of Love and
Black Dog.
Black Dog and
Rock
Kashmir,
and Roll.
Rock and Roll.
Battle of Evermore.
Battle of Evermore. Going to California. and many more. So he was there, and he was up on stage during our set, right behind the big PA column on stage left, and he was just sitting cross-legged, on the stage, just checking us out. And I was so beside myself, I could barely play. I just was like, "That's him right there! Oh my God!" And so afterwards, we told Anne, because he was going to come back and say hi to us, around the tent in the field there. And so we got some folding chairs and we sat in a circle with Robert Plant, and he shot the breeze and he said, I really like your song Barracuda. I have a portable turntable that I take around on the tour with me, and I like to listen to that in my hotel. We're like, you said what? You like Barracuda? And that's about like the point at which we're sort of shaking and crying, as well. It's like the super fan thing. And so then he was just really cool and cash, and and when he walked away to go see another band that was going to start, and just like looks after him and watches him walk away, and she says, "The air moves around him."
You don't forget a line like that, huh?
No, I never will.
That is so funny. And what year was he? All right, was this post Zepp, or was this approximately?
This was probably 79.
Oh, okay. It was when they played. It wasn't at their Nebworth show, was it?
They might have been there for the festival on a different night or something. I'm not sure.
Got it.
He was there making the scene, basically, right. But they probably were there to play. It's one of those days, maybe the next night or something. They were probably going to close the festival, but but we ran into him quite a few times. We went and saw him do him and Alison Krauss do their Raising Sand show. I went to both the shows that they did at the that outdoor show that they did in LA at the Greek Theater, and that album was just one of my all-time favorite albums.
And you were there.
Wore that thing out.
You were there the year before too, right? Didn't you and your sister travel to the O2 in 2007 to see the big show?
Oh, I was going to go. They did, but they had to go without me because the night before, one of my little boys had a big fever going on, so I couldn't just.
Wow.
I'm off to the show,
Right.
But Anne was texting me all throughout, or at least the first half. And she's like, "Okay, they open with a Whole Lot of Love. Okay, they open with it's like, oh my god." We're like texting feverishly, but then she just she goes, "Oh my God, they're starting Kashmir." I think it was Kashmir, and that's the last I heard. She was just. She was in the vortex at that point.
That was the end of your virtual riding along on that.
Yeah.
And then it wasn't that many years later, though. Really, that's one of those remarkable performances. I'm talking about when you guys did the Kennedy Center honors. You had John Bonham's son, Jason, on board. Explain to folks, if you can, with your great way of telling it, how that came together, and maybe just some highlights of that story.
Yeah, that was insanely big story to tell, but
Do you mind? Am I screwing you up with time? Do you have?
no, not at all. No,
Okay. Okay.
I've still got at least 10 minutes, but it came through CAA. The head of CAA, Rob Light, wanted to find us a really cool event, to kind of get us on the map, because he's just a really wonderful guy. And he said, well, they're doing a Led Zeppelin tribute at the Kennedy Center this year, so what do you think? And we're like, we would not ever be able to say no to that. So we were already on the road, but and we had a show like the day before, with one day off. We flew all the way from wherever the last show was, somewhere Miami, I believe, into DC, with one day to do one rehearsal. And because all the rehearsals were all scheduled at different times of the day, because there was so much rehearsal to do. So we made one rehearsal in the one room with the choir and the band and everybody there. And so it was really cold. It was before Christmas, and my hands were really stiff from the cold because we'd been waiting outside right before we got in for the rehearsal. So everybody's like, okay, everybody, get ready. We're gonna start. So you start. And so my fingers were so cold. I was like, and I could barely get it out. The beginning of Stairway to Heaven, which I was like so humiliated. It's like, my fingers are really cold, so if I'll get this right later. They're like, really? Are you sure you don't need us to kind of play along, shadow you, playing the beginning? It's like, no, I got this. So, I made a really big point of making sure my fingers were super warmed up before the actual performance. And so me and Anne, we were supposed to be a surprise to Led Zeppelin. So later that night, we went to the restaurant, and John Paul Jones came in, and we were like, oh, hi, Jonesy, how you doing? Because he produced an album with us one time, and so we know him pretty well. And I was like, oh no, we're just here for to see the show. We're just here because the show's going to be really cool. But we did not admit we're part of the show, especially the part that tributes them in the show at the end of the show. So the finale. So then, when it got to the moment, it was really nerve-wracking because I had my fingers, in my husband Jeff's armpits. So it's like, okay, warm up my hands quick. And then it went off without a hitch. And it was, but, that was one of those, take a really deep breath and focus, moments, walking out there with all those dignitaries and the president and first wife and a bunch of amazing other artists and, contemporaries. And,
right. You rocked for Barack Obama. Watched you cover Led Zeppelin with the surviving members of Zeppelin in the audience, with John Bonham's kid on drums with you, right?
Yes, and he toured with us too. Besides that, we took him out with us. I think part of the emotional reaction from the guys up in the balcony that we only saw much later was because of Jason Bonham, because not just the song being done properly for a change, but the whole reveal of the small ensemble and then the larger ensemble and then the orchestra parts and then the bowler hats on everybody, and then which was John Bonham's signature hat.
Right, tribute to John.
And then to see John's son up there on the drums, who who grew up around them as the kid. It's like they're his uncles or something, that he was always hanging around in their rehearsal spaces and where they were recording. And So it was like a piece of family for them to, you know, have an emotional reaction to, not as well, not just us. So
Yeah,
it
it was
was
a
really,
family connection. No, I totally get it. And the way they honored John Bonham by disbanding and never using the name again, except for one reunion show that actually used the name. Other than that, what a way to pay tribute to John Bonham. So that
yeah.
you're summing up the fact that I get it. I mean, to see that presentation must have really hit them. Did you have words with them afterwards? I mean, in addition to the folks can see the video of Robert Plant wiping away tears watching it, but afterwards when you finally connected with them?
Yeah, there was like a governor's ball dinner kind of thing afterward for the whole production. And each one of them came up individually, walked over to our table, and, John Paul Jones was like, "Oh, that was just fabulous," and, "Oh, you guys did great." And then Jimmy Page walked up, and he just said, "You played that so good." And I'm like, "Hey, I can die now," Jimmy Page telling me I played that well is, you know, was everything. And he really loved how it sounded and how restrained we kept the tempo. And, he said really cool musical comments about the way we did it. And then Robert Plant said, you know, I've grown to hate that song so much, but you guys did it justice because people murder it all the time. So it was kind of cute, like a backhanded way to compliment it. It's like, I don't hate it when you do it.
Right. No, totally. I mean, that's such an amazing. And any reaction from Barack Obama?
Well, we met him the day before, the same
At the
day. There
rehearsal
was a
thing.
luncheon. Yeah, the day of the show after the rehearsal day. And there was a luncheon for all the performers. And so of course we went. There's a photo up there. So we got a picture with him. And again, I was such a gushing fan that when we finally got up to meet him and Michelle, I was like, "Thank you so much for your leadership." And he just, shook our hands. And I went to Michelle and just went, "You rock. You so rock." And then you're out of there. You have like 2 seconds. And then we got our pictures in the mail later. It was really cool to have those.
What a neat one, and that's a presidential picture you'll be holding on to for sure.
I know. I have it. Around the house somewhere.
No, I'm sure you do. As we go to wrap it up, then one final question, because you do it so well, describing your hero encounters. I don't know, maybe there isn't a favorite one. Maybe this is an underwhelming final question. Are there other favorite hero encounters, or either more shocking or unusual encounters with a hero or superstar that you've got, that could, I don't know that it's going to top your Led Zeppelin thing, obviously, because of their role in your life, but is there another one similarly when you think of your career and the ways you've gotten to do similar interactions?
Well, always Elton John was one of our top favorite. We were the biggest fans of Elton all the way through. And initially, when we were in the same town at L.A., we were working in L.A. on an album, and Elton John came to play L.A. and we got backstage, to meet him, and we had like a gift for him and a special tie and with a special card, and we were like the Honky Man, and because of the Honky Cat song,
Sure.
Tumbleweed Connection, and we were just sort of like we just had the jitters, we were just butterflies, and we saw Bernie, our other big idol, and over the years, we've been able to run into those guys quite a few times, and it's always so great to remember how such good people they are. What great people they are. And Elton, especially these days when he's been clean for so long, sober, he's really the sweetest as they come. He's the best. He's charming, thoughtful. And, emotionally correct person.
That's really neat. That's a really cool one. Oh, I guess one last name then, and I doubt you have a story, but Nancy Wilson, the famous jazz singer. I've always been curious if you've met your namesake along the way.
I always wished we had put something like that together, but we never were traveling in the same circles. But I did get a whole bunch of her mail at one point. One of the letters that came to the wrong Nancy Wilson at my house was for Black parenting. So it was really funny, like how many times I got to say, well, okay, you mean the Black jazz singer, right? So, I no longer have that joke in my pocket because she's no longer around.
Right.
But yeah, that was always funny the first day of school. Nancy Wilson, are you related? It's like, no, not really. I am a singer, but I'm not related.
It's so funny. It's Nancy Wilson of Heart, our very special guest, and doing the She Rocks Awards. Folks can look for it at parade.com/SheRocks and believeInmusic.tv to watch it. And they have some VIP passes so that folks can get into the Zoom after show event, and maybe you can gush to Nancy about your favorite Heart song or a way it's been inspirational for you, helped you through difficult times. And
here's $20.
Yeah. I hope that you had fun doing this today. I hope this was a good time.
Yes, Dave, I really enjoyed talking to you again. Thank you so much for the intelligent talk. Aloha, it's Nancy Wilson of Heart, and I've returned for HBR's latest funding campaign. It was a real treat to be back on the air with my friend David Lawrence. I was part of Dave's Off the Road series, but it was only possible because of our members. Yep, that's how it works. Listeners become members. So, my friends, how about some aloha from you? Whatever you can afford, we're grateful. Here's how, and a big mahalo.
Man, you're so good at doing these. And thank you so much for all the camaraderie, the great stories.
Well, fun too, really, really good.
All right.
You're welcome.
Hugs and high fives for you. Stay safe, Nancy, and I hope it's not a decade till we talk again.
I know. Let's make it sooner. Okay, we'll do it.
Awesome. Stay safe, and all my best to you. Good luck.
Okay, good luck.
Aloha.
Stay safe. Take care. Aloha.